The afternoon sun blazed over Arlington, painting long shadows across the white marble. The crowd had gathered like they did every day. Tourists, veterans, families, all united in silence. At the heart of it stood a tomb guard, motionless, rifle at his side, eyes fixed forward like a statue carved from discipline itself. The rhythmic click of his boots against the stone had stopped minutes ago. Now, only the faint rustling of flags filled the air. That's when a line of black SUVs rolled to a halt near the ceremonial plaza. Doors opened, and out stepped a man whose presence instantly shifted the atmosphere. General Rutherford. 4 stars gleamed on his shoulders, and a trail of aides and reporters followed him like shadows. He wasn't here as a tourist. He was here to make a point. The crowd parted, confused, as the general walked directly toward the guard's post. He crossed the invisible line that most people instinctively respected. Reporters raised their cameras. Parents pulled their kids closer. Even the veterans in the crowd straightened their backs, and then, in a tone half command, half taunt, the general's voice rang out, "Soldier, what's your call sign?" It wasn't a respectful question. It was a test. The guard didn't move. He didn't blink. His breathing didn't change. The world seemed to pause with him. For a heartbeat, the crowd thought he'd ignore it, like every guard does when faced with distraction. But this time, something different was about to unfold. The general stepped closer, boots echoing against the stone, his eyes locked on the soldier's face. "I asked you a question," he said, louder now, so the microphones could catch every word. A ripple of unease spread through the plaza. Kids stared wide-eyed. Veterans exchanged knowing looks. Reporters leaned in, and then, with measured precision, the guard's voice cut through the silence like a blade. Just 2 words. Ghost 1. It wasn't shouted. It wasn't emotional. It was controlled. And it hit harder than a cannon blast. For a moment, time froze. The general's expression faltered. Reporters lowered their cameras in stunned silence. Even the breeze seemed to hold its breath. The crowd didn't know what Ghost 1 meant, but the way it was spoken, the weight behind it, told them everything they needed to know. Something powerful, something buried in the soldier's past had just been unlocked. Asterisk, long before he stood guard at Arlington, before the world whispered the name Ghost 1 in OE, Michael Turner was just a soldier in the dust and fire of Afghanistan. He'd grown up in a small town in Kentucky, quiet, respectful, always the kid who held doors open and saluted the flag before he could spell the word discipline. His father was a mechanic, his mother a nurse. They didn't have much, but they raised him with one unwavering principle: honor is not about being seen. It's about standing when no one else will. When he turned 18, Michael enlisted. By 20, he'd earned his place in an elite special forces unit, the kind of team that operated in shadows. That's where the call sign was born. Ghost 1. It happened during a mission no official report ever fully described. His team had been trapped in a valley, ambushed from both sides. Radio contact was cut, helicopter support delayed. For hours, they fought against impossible odds. When night fell, Turner led a daring flanking maneuver, disappearing into the darkness with only 2 men at his side. He slipped through enemy lines, eliminated key positions, and cleared a path for the rest of the unit. They called him Ghost because he moved like he wasn't there, unseen, unheard, until it was too late. But that mission came with a price. His best friend, SGT Davis, the man who'd shared rations, jokes, and letters from home, was killed in the final minutes of extraction. Turner had dragged him out of the firefight, hands slick with blood, whispering, "Hold on, brother, hold on." Davis didn't make it. That night etched a scar deeper than any wound. Turner completed his service, decorated with medals he didn't care to display. The laughter in his eyes dimmed. He returned home a hero on paper, but inside, he carried a silent weight. Then he found the tomb. The tomb of the unknown soldier wasn't just stone and ceremony. It was sacrifice carved into marble, discipline echoed through time. Here, men and women trained for months to move with perfection, every step measured, every turn precise. They guarded not a person, but a legacy to wear the tomb guard badge. Turner shaved away everything unnecessary: sleep, emotion, ego. His movements became clockwork. His mind, still, the silence, which once haunted him, now gave him purpose. For Turner, standing watch wasn't a duty, it was atonement. Each step he took across that mat was for the friends who couldn't take another. Each rifle click was a promise whispered into the wind: "I'm still here. I won't forget." On the other side of this story stood General Rutherford, a man forged not in battlefields but in command centers, decorated, brilliant, ambitious, and feared more for his arrogance than his tactics. He'd spent decades climbing ranks, earning respect through results, but not always through humility. In recent years, Rutherford had made headlines for his harsh criticism of ceremonial units. "Tradition is fine for parades," he once said in an interview, "but real soldiers fight real wars. Standing guard at a tomb doesn't make you a hero." Those words echoed through military circles, stirring anger among veterans who knew the meaning of silence, of honor, of discipline. But Rutherford didn't care. To him, ceremonial posts were theatrics, a stage show meant to impress tourists. When he announced a public visit to Arlington, no one expected reverence. They expected a spectacle. Reporters were tipped off. Cameras were ready. It wasn't a memorial to him, it was a podium. The day of his visit was clear. The sky painted a crisp blue. The tomb plaza was crowded. Families, tourists, veterans in wheelchairs, children on their parents' shoulders. The tomb itself stood silent, flanked by immaculate marble steps and polished brass chains. Every inch of that place whispered discipline. The guards' mat, black and worn from decades of perfect steps, stretched like a timeline between past and present. Turner stood there, as he had countless times before, still as stone, mind locked into rhythm, heart anchored to duty. But behind that mask of precision, memories flickered. The valley, the gunfire, Davis's last breath. He didn't flinch. He never did. When Rutherford's motorcade rolled in, Turner didn't look. He wasn't supposed to, but he felt the shift. The air changed. Whispers spread. The sound of boots echoed where tourists usually walked. Among the crowd, some recognized the general. Others held up their phones, eager to capture whatever came next. Veterans crossed their arms, already sensing trouble. Rutherford approached like a man stepping onto a stage. He looked at the tomb, then at Turner, not with reverence, but with calculated curiosity. This wasn't going to be a visit. This was going to be a test. And though no one knew it yet, what would unfold that afternoon wouldn't just challenge one man's composure. It would reveal a buried story and shake the crowd to its core. The moment General Rutherford stepped past the ceremonial barrier, an invisible line was crossed, not just in marble and space, but in tradition. Tourists instinctively hushed. The atmosphere shifted from casual reverence to something sharper, heavier. Turner stood at his post, rifle at his side, eyes locked forward. His breathing didn't change. His stance didn't break. He was trained for this, to be the unmovable presence, the embodiment of discipline. But Rutherford wasn't here to quietly observe. He stopped just a few feet from Turner, hands clasped behind his back, studying the guard like a man inspecting a statue. The general tilted his head, a smirk creeping at the corners of his mouth. "So this is it," he muttered loud enough for those nearby to hear. "All this, for a stone box." A veteran in the crowd stiffened. A mother pulled her child a little closer. Rutherford took a slow step closer, deliberately letting the heels of his boots echo through the plaza. "Tell me, soldier," he said, with mock curiosity, "how does it feel to stand here all day while real soldiers fight real wars?" The words cut through the air like a blade. Turner didn't flinch. He couldn't. He was the sentinel. His body language alone carried centuries of weight. Rutherford circled him slowly, like a wolf testing the perimeter of a fence. He leaned close enough to see the soldier's eyelashes, searching for a crack, a blink, a twitch, anything. "Do you even know what it's like out there?" Rutherford continued. "Of course you don't. You're a mannequin with a rifle." A few reporters chuckled nervously. Their cameras zoomed in, sensing something viral. Among the crowd. However, the veterans were not amused. An elderly Marine in a wheelchair clenched his fists. A woman with a gold star pin whispered, "This isn't right." The contrast was striking. One man in power trying to provoke, and one man of discipline refusing to give ground. Rutherford shifted tactics. He turned to the crowd, spreading his arms like a performer addressing an audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is what your tax dollars go to," he announced with a theatrical flourish. Soldiers trained to walk in straight lines and stare at walls. "Impressive, isn't it?" A few in the crowd murmured in disapproval. Some tourists looked confused, unsure if this was part of a ceremony, but the veterans' faces were stone. They knew. Turner's rifle gleamed under the sun, perfectly positioned against his shoulder. His eyes, unblinking, stared past the general as if he didn't exist. Inside, though a storm brewed, he'd heard insults before from drunk tourists, from rowdy teens. But this was different. This was a man wearing the same uniform, the same flag on his shoulder, standing in sacred ground, and mocking it. Yet Turner stayed still, because that's what Ghost One did. He endured. He held the line. The tension thickened. Kids went quiet. Veterans leaned forward in their wheelchairs. Reporters adjusted their positions for better angles. Rutherford walked behind Turner, deliberately scraping his heel against the stone. The sound was sharp, grating. "I wonder," he said, voice dripping with provocation, "if you'd last 5 minutes outside this gate." He stopped at Turner's side again, facing him, chest puffed. "You think silence makes you strong, but standing here means anything. Real men don't hide behind ceremonies." The guard didn't respond. He wasn't supposed to. But every word hit like a hammer against a steel wall that refused to crack, and then the crowd began to change. What started as silent observation grew into murmurs, whispers between strangers, veterans exchanging sharp nods, parents explaining in hushed tones to their children what they were witnessing. One veteran said under his breath, "He's trying to break him." Another replied, "He won't." Not ghost. Reporters began live social media notifications pinged in the background as the confrontation spread in real time. A teenage boy in the front whispered, "Why doesn't he say something?" His father replied quietly, "Because that's not his job, son. His job is to stand." Rutherford wasn't done. His eyes glinted as if enjoying the attention. He took one more slow step forward, invading Turner's personal space, closer than anyone dared approach a tomb guard. "What's your name, soldier?" he asked. No answer. "Your unit?" Silent. "Your call sign?" That last question lingered in the air like smoke. It was the same one he'd asked minutes earlier, the question that had made the crowd hold its breath. Turner's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. His eyes remained fixed forward, but inside, the memories flickered the valley, the darkness, SGT Davis's last breath. He stayed silent. The crowd was now emotionally invested. Veterans' faces showed pride. Kids stared in awe. Even the reporters, sensing something bigger than just a stunt, began to quiet down. The air grew thick. Every second of Turner's stillness became a statement. He didn't need to raise his voice. His silence was the resistance. Rutherford, however, wasn't accustomed to silence. He was a man used to control two barking orders and receiving answers. This lack of reaction infuriated him. Dotter's voice rose. "I'm talking to you, soldier. Do you think you're better than me?" No reaction, not a blink. "You're just a man in a costume, playing soldier in front of tourists." Gasps rippled through the crowd. That line crossed from provocation to insult. A veteran in the front row shouted, "Show some respect, General." Others joined in with low murmurs of disapproval. But Turner didn't move. This silent defiance had begun to turn the tide. Where at first the general commanded attention, now all eyes were on the guard, on his composure, his posture, his unbroken discipline. The crowd began to rally around him without him saying a word. Some tourists lowered their phones, suddenly aware they were witnessing something bigger than a viral moment. Veterans nodded to each other like brothers, recognizing shared honor. Even children felt it, that sense of something sacred being tested, and someone standing firm. Rutherford's smile faded. For the first time, a flicker of frustration crossed his face. He took another step forward, closer than regulation allowed. His shadow fell over Turner's face. "Let's see how long this little act lasts," he whispered, just loud enough for Turner to hear. He turned his back on the crowd, pacing slowly, clearly preparing to push further, and everyone watching knew the general wasn't finished, but neither was Ghost One. The plaza was silent, thick with tension. The crowd had gone from curious to captivated, locked into the standoff unfolding between the immovable guard and the provocative general. The air felt heavier with each second. Cameras hovered. Kids held their parents' hands. Veterans leaned forward like they were back on the front lines, and then, it happened. Rutherford stepped forward again. This time, crossing the brass chain, the unwritten, sacred boundary around the tomb. His polished shoes clacked against the black mat where only the tomb guards are allowed to march. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. A woman whispered, "He can't do that." A veteran muttered under his breath, "He just did." Rutherford stopped shoulder to shoulder with Turner, so close their uniforms nearly brushed. His breath was audible in the microphone of a nearby camera. "You're not special," he hissed. "You're a prop in a costume." And then, in a move that froze time, he reached out and tapped Turner's shoulder. The contact was light, but in Arlington, it was a violation as loud as a gunshot. For a heartbeat, everything stopped. The flags froze mid. The reporter's lenses clicked in perfect rhythm. A child whispered, "Why did he touch him?" Turner's training, honed over months of relentless discipline, kicked in like a reflex. In one fluid, razor-sharp movement, he rotated his rifle from shoulder arms to port arms, snapping it diagonally across his chest. The steel slammed against his gloves, echoing across the marble like a warning shot. Every tomb guard learns this maneuver. It's not aggression. It's protocol. It's the last verbal warning. Without words, the crowd erupted in gasps and stunned silence. Turner's face didn't change. His eyes remained locked straight ahead, but his voice, when it finally came, was like steel through air, low, commanding, perfectly measured. Sir, you are in a restricted area. Step back immediately. No shouting, no emotion. Just regulation, perfect authority. That it wasn't the voice of a ceremonial guard anymore. It was the voice of Ghost One, the soldier who once led men through fire and darkness. Rutherford froze. For the first time since arriving, his confidence wavered. His eyes flicked to the rifle, then to Turner's unwavering face. The crowd was deathly silent, hanging on the moment like a live wire. He tried to laugh it off. Relax, soldier. It's just a touch. But his voice lacked the swagger it carried earlier. Turner didn't move. He didn't blink. His presence filled the space like a wall. Immovable, disciplined, absolute. A nearby veteran whispered, "There it is, the line." Another replied softly, and he just crossed it. Camera zoomed in. Reporters spoke in hushed tones into their microphones. The moment was now broadcast live, picked up by feeds across social media. The general's tap and the guard's response were already trending. But here, on the marble, it wasn't about likes or views. It was about tradition colliding with arrogance. Right before everyone's eyes, Rutherford straightened his shoulders, trying to recover his composure. But the crowd's energy had shifted completely. They weren't laughing anymore. The veterans were locked in attention, many with eyes glistening because they recognized the maneuver, the tone, the unspoken code. This is sacred ground. The general stepped back half a pace, his voice rising defensively. "I'm a 4-star general. Soldier, watch yourself." Turner didn't respond. He wasn't supposed to. The warning had been given. The silence that followed was crushing. It wasn't the silence of protocol anymore. It was the silence of history watching. Then came the moment that would make this confrontation unforgettable. Rutherford, flustered by the lack of control, turned to the crowd. "You all see this," he said loudly. "This is what happens when soldiers forget their place. A guard thinks he can challenge a general." But no one laughed. No one cheered. Instead, a veteran in uniform raised his hand to his brow and saluted Turner slowly, proudly. Another followed. Then another. Soon, half a dozen veterans in the crowd were saluting the guard, not the general. The sight of old men in wheelchairs, hands trembling but raised in respect, broke the tension like a sunrise. Reporters spun their cameras to capture the moment. Kids whispered, "Why are they saluting him?" And their parents answered softly, "Because he's doing what's right." Rutherford turned back toward Turner, but the ground had shifted beneath him. He'd tried to humiliate. Instead, he'd been outmatched by discipline. Turner remained at port arms, unmoving. His voice had said the bare minimum, but his actions spoke volumes. This wasn't about rank anymore. This was about respect. A ceremonial sergeant, part of the Arlington command staff, quickly approached from the sidelines. His polished shoes echoed like drumbeats as he stepped onto the plaza. His face sterned up. He stopped beside Rutherford and, in a firm but respectful tone, addressed him. "General, you are inside the ceremonial boundary. Please step back immediately." Rutherford blinked, caught between pride and embarrassment. The crowd was watching. The cameras were rolling. His authority was suddenly under the spotlight, not because Turner disrespected him, but because Turner refused to break. With stiff motions, Rutherford finally stepped back across the brass chain. The sergeant nodded to Turner, who with surgical precision returned his rifle to shoulder arms, snapping back into ceremonial posture. The plaza exhaled collectively. For Turner, it was just protocol. For the crowd, it was the turning point, the exact second when the line between ceremony and reality blurred. Reporters whispered into their microphones. In a stunning moment at Arlington today, a 4-star general crossed the ceremonial boundary and touched the guard on duty. The guard responded with flawless regulation, leaving the general visibly shaken. Social media exploded. Clips of the shoulder tap and rifle maneuver spread across platforms, gathering millions of views within hours. Hashtags like #GhostOne and #Honor in Silence began trending. But Turner wasn't thinking about cameras. He wasn't thinking about trending videos. He was thinking about his promise. The one whispered long ago over a friend's lifeless body, "I'll stand where others fall." And today, he had stood. The plaza returned to silence. Turner resumed his post, eyes forward, rifle steady. The tourists, veterans, and reporters who had witnessed the moment wouldn't forget it. Because on that ordinary afternoon, discipline spoke louder than power. The plaza was silent. The only sound was the faint rustle of flags in the breeze and the soft shuffle of boots from Arlington staff approaching the scene. Rutherford's face, once sharp with arrogance, was now a mask of confusion. He had expected defiance to be instant compliance, a minor embarrassment at most. Instead, he faced something he had never accounted for: unshakable discipline and absolute control. The ceremonial sergeant approached quickly, standing a respectful arm's length from Turner. "Généraux Hutet, he said, his voice firm, measured. "You have violated the restricted area and the rules of protocol. You must step back immediately or be escorted." Rutherford's lips tightened. He glanced at the crowd. Cameras were rolling. Reporters whispered into their microphones, narrating every move. "Are you seriously threatening me?" he barked. The sergeant did not flinch. "No, sir. I am enforcing protocol." In that moment, the power dynamics shifted. The general, who had strutted into Arlington expecting authority, found himself challenged by order itself. The crowd sensed it instantly. Gasps turned into murmurs. Whispers spread like wildfire. "He's being escorted. The guard is still standing. Discipline 1. Rutherford hesitated, glancing at Turner. The guard's face remained perfectly still, eyes forward, rifle steady, the embodiment of silent command. And then, slowly, Rutherford nodded, signaling surrender. 2 uniformed military police stepped forward and gently guided Rutherford across the plaza, his pride evident in the stiffness of his posture. Cameras captured every moment. Reporters shouted questions, but he did not answer. His words were meaningless here. Actions spoke louder than titles. Turner watched without moving. He didn't cheer. He didn't smile. His role was not to gloat, but to maintain honor in stillness. The crowd, however, erupted into a mixture of applause, murmurs of awe and quiet respect. Veterans saluted. Children stared wide. Parents explained softly to their kids, "That's what standing for something looks like." Cameras and phones continued to record. The viral moment had begun. Clips of the shoulder tap, the perfect rifle maneuver, and Turner's calm authority spread across social media instantly. This soldier, standing at the tomb of the unknown soldier, just handled a 4-star general like he was nothing. A reporter said live on air, "Discipline over arrogance." Another commented, and Turner remained motionless. The plaza's energy shifted from tension to reverence. People weren't reacting to the general's fall, they were reacting to the guard's unwavering composure. The fact that one man's stillness had commanded respect from a world used to noise and power. For Turner, the moment was quiet, almost personal. He recalled the letters from fallen friends, the scars hidden beneath his uniform, and the memory of SGT Davis's last words. Each step, each second, every measured breath was a tribute. Now, the world was watching, and he had held the line. The ceremonial staff allowed Turner a brief pause before he resumed his ritual march along the mat. Boots clicked in perfect rhythm, rifle aligned precisely. Each movement was calculated, yet imbued with silent authority. The crowd instinctively stepped back, giving him space. Cameras focused, capturing the image of a man who stood for everything unspoken: honor, discipline, and sacrifice. Veterans whispered among themselves, "That's Ghost One." I knew it the second he didn't move. Discipline will always outlast arrogance. Even reporters, hungry for sensational soundbite, could only describe the moment, not diminish it. Turner had transcended the spectacle. A small child tugged at their mother's sleeve. "Mom, he's a hero." The mother nodded, her eyes glistening. "Yes, sweetie, that's exactly what he is." Turner didn't hear it. He didn't need to. His eyes stayed forward, mind anchored to the ritual and the honor it represented. The viral fame, the crowd, the general's embarrassment, none of it mattered. For Ghost One, there was only the march, the rifle, the tomb, and the promise kept to those who could no longer stand. The moment captured was already making headlines across the country. Tomb guard stands tall against general. Viral moment of discipline captivates millions. Ghost One, soldier who silenced arrogance. Turner's name was not known widely yet, but his reputation was cemented in the hearts of those who witnessed it. Discipline.com and honor had prevailed, and as the crowd slowly dispersed, Turner returned to his unwavering stance at the tomb, rifle at shoulder, eyes forward. Order had been restored, chaos had been contained, respect had been earned. The plaza seemed to exhale, as though acknowledging that discipline always speaks louder than power. The plaza had quieted, the cameras had stopped rolling, but the energy of the day lingered like an echo. Arlington seemed to breathe again, its marble floors reflecting the sun as if acknowledging the order restored. Turner remained at his post, boots aligned, rifle steady, eyes forward. To the world, he was just a tomb guard, standing perfectly still. But inside, a quiet satisfaction mingled with memory. He thought of SGT Davis, his fallen comrade, whose dog tag still hung beneath his uniform. The weight of it pressed against his chest, a reminder of promises made long ago in a battlefield far from this polished plaza. I will stand where others cannot. Today, that promise had been fulfilled. A colonel, an old mentor who had trained alongside Turner in Special Forces years ago, approached quietly. His polished boots clicked softly against the marble. Without a word, he raised his hand in a sharp salute. Turner returned it with precise discipline. "Ghost One," the colonel said, voice low but carrying weight. "You held the line." Turner's jaw tightened ever so slightly. A flicker of pride passed behind his otherwise impassive eyes. He simply nodded. No celebration, no grand gestures. Honor, he knew, didn't require applause. From the crowd, a small child emerged, hesitating, tugging gently at a parent's sleeve. The mother whispered, "Go ahead, sweetie," and the boy approached Turner timidly. "Are you a hero?" the child asked in a whisper. Turner's eyes never left his forward gaze. Still, he pressed a gloved hand gently on the boy's shoulder. A simple gesture, no words, and yet the child smiled, understanding what discipline and courage could mean even without fanfare. The crowd slowly dispersed, leaving Turner in the calm aftermath of the day's chaos. Reporters had packed away cameras, and social media had already exploded with clips and hashtags. Hashtag Ghost One, hashtag honoring silence, hashtag discipline over arrogance. But Turner didn't think of fame or recognition. Fame was fleeting, respect was earned, and today, discipline had spoken louder than rank, honor louder than ego. He lowered his eyes briefly, catching the sunlight on the polished dog tag dangling from his chest. Davis's name was engraved there, a memory of sacrifice, loss, and the enduring promise of loyalty. Turner pressed it lightly against his heart, a silent homage to his fallen friend. A subtle wind whispered through the plaza, lifting the flags gently. The sound seemed like a quiet acknowledgement, a nod to the man who had stood unwavering in the face of arrogance. Turner's reflection shifted inward. This is what it means to carry the weight of others. This is what it means to serve, silently, without expectation. Nearby, a young veteran whispered to another, "That's the kind of soldier we all wanted to be." He didn't yell, he didn't strike, he just stood. Turner's expression didn't change, but inside, he felt the quiet validation of a life dedicated to purpose. He had been through battles where shouting, running, and firing were necessary. But here, in a world where silence itself could command respect, he realized that true strength often required stillness, patience, and precision. As the shadows grew longer across Arlington, Turner resumed his perfect march along the black mat, rifle clicking in rhythm, eyes forward, heartbeat measured and calm. The general's departure, the crowd's whispers, the viral headlines all had faded into background noise. What remained was the eternal duty of the tomb guard, the promise to the unknown soldiers, and the quiet memory of friends who could no longer stand beside him. Turner's reflection was simple. Discipline is not weakness. Silence is not surrender. Honor is not loud. And in that moment, as the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting a golden glow across the plaza, Turner realized that standing still could move the hearts of thousands, that one man's resolve could remind a world of what truly matters. For Ghost One, the day ended as it always did, silent, unwavering, resolute, as the sun sank lower, casting long shadows across Arlington. The plaza slowly emptied, tourists departed, reporters packed away their cameras, and the echoes of the day's tension softened into memory. Yet, for those who had witnessed it, the story lingered, a reminder that true strength is quiet, steadfast, and disciplined. Ghost One remained at his post, eyes forward, rifle aligned, boots clicking in rhythm with unwavering precision. To the untrained eye, he was just another guard standing silently. But anyone who truly watched understood, this was a man who carried the weight of history, honor and sacrifice in every step. Moments like today were not about recognition. They were about standing firm when the world expects you to yield, about letting actions speak louder than words. Turner's stillness had exposed arrogance, commanded respect, and reminded everyone, young and old, soldier and civilian alike, that discipline is a form of power. A veteran in the crowd whispered to a companion, voice tinged with awe, "Tradition isn't weakness. Stillness is strength." And that truth, echoing across marble and memory, captured the essence of Arlington, of the tomb, and of those who guard it. For Ghost One, the day would end as it always did, without applause, without ceremony, without fanfare. But the lesson was clear. Honor does not seek validation. It simply stands, unwavering. Courage does not shout. It endures quietly. Discipline is not a choice for show. It is a commitment to promise to something greater than oneself. The child who had called him hero earlier would remember. The veterans who had saluted him would remember. And the millions online who witnessed the viral moment would remember. Not the humiliation of a general, not the spectacle, but the power of standing firm, silently, against chaos and arrogance. So, whenever the world grows loud, whenever egos clash and noise overwhelms virtue, pause and remember, sometimes, the greatest strength is simply to stand your ground. If stories like this inspire you, share them, honor them, and carry the lessons forward. Because in a world full of noise, the quietest voice often speaks the loudest.